What is the importance of memory? Here's a scenario. You are a neuroscientist who has developed a method to selectively erase memories from patients at their request. A patient, let's call them Jane, begs you to erase one of their memories. Jane witnessed their best friend John be brutally murdered and has debilitating PTSD. This condition has severely impacted Jane, degrading their quality of life immensely. However, Jane is the only eyewitness of John's murder. If you erase the memory of the murder, the investigation will lack sufficient evidence and the perpetrator would go free. Overall, the investigation and the process of convicting the perpetrator would take a minimum of several months, including the time for the investigation, pretrial procedures, trial itself, and the sentencing, all during which Jane would have to keep the memory for their eyewitness account. During this time, Jane would still suffer from their PTSD and would face a prolonged mental health crisis. Therefore, the ethical dilemma within this situation is, would you erase the memory or not? Let's go through the first way to think about this scenario. While erasing the memory Jane had of the incident would eliminate their individual suffering, it wouldn't necessarily produce the best results for society and everyone involved. This idea goes to utilitarianism, an ethical theory that states an action is right only if its consequences result in the largest possible amount of good for the largest group of people. While erasing the memory would help Jane as an individual, it wouldn't help society as a whole, as it would keep a murderer on the street. If you were to think like a utilitarian, you would say that not erasing the memory would be the right choice, as it would lead to a greater chance of the murderer being arrested and kept away from society, which would be the greatest possible amount of good for the greatest number of people. A second way to look at the scenario would be through adhering to a moral duty. If your situation were to multiply throughout the world, would you want every person in your position to erase the memory? Or would you feel that it would be correct to preserve the memory? This goes to Kantian deontology, another theory that focuses on the morality of an action in relation to if the person performing that action could consistently will it to become a universal law. Per Kantian deontology, one should refrain from considering personal inclinations and focus on the morality of an action based on duty and principles. Someone following this theory would most likely also argue for preserving the memory to preserve the truth as a universal principle. Let's change the situation. Let's say Jane isn't just a random patient, but is also your best friend. Would you still preserve their memory for the greater good? This idea goes to egoism, a theory that an action is only right if it has the best consequences for the person executing the action. In this case, that person is you. Disregarding society and others involved, someone following this theory could emphasize that erasing the memory would lead to your friend's health improving, which would lead to the best outcome for you. We've explored these three options. There are countless other ways to think about the situation, other ideas from other theorists that could be applied. The most important question that still stands is, what would you do?